Good evening. When we focus on power and privilege and how they are used to persistently benefit some while disadvantaging others, we see that the system of education is in need of a radical change. This is the lens that Dr. Sharon Rad employs in her article, Avoiding the Traps, identifying and disrupting six paradoxical habits of equity leadership. She notes that she notes that this power and privilege is built um, upon social constructs that are reinforced in systems like education. For the system to reinforce power and privilege, it must prioritize leadership that benefits from those systems, which is why we see a concentration of white leaders in education, especially in California, in a system that is dominated by Latinx students. Educators and policymakers use data from the achievement gap to call for more equitable practices that will help to eliminate the inequities that reinforce that achievement gap. Dr. Rad writes, one line of understanding that has emerged from these analyses has been to identify patterns in educator thoughts and actions that are well intended, but in reality further entrench inequities. I have written in my personal journals and discussion posts about how equity is a buzzword if we aren't actually working towards it. We can't work towards it if we do not understand that these inequities are embedded in thought and unconscious action. Dr. Rad cites McKinsey and Shurick, who coined the term equity traps, which is defined as patterns of thinking and behavior that trap the possibilities for creating equitable schools for children of color. These traps are reinforced in conversations, formal and informal, and belief systems of dominant culture. I want to be clear that these conversations are happening everywhere, formally and informally, at decision making tables and at the dinner table. Rad calls these traps paradoxical habits. Paradoxical because they're well intended but harmful all the same, and habits because they're done continuously without thought. Rad then lays out six paradoxical habits that entrench educational equity. To entrench means to dig deeper, and we do that in a unassuming way over millions of people and throughout different sectors of industry. Again, at the decision making table and at the dinner table. While Rad writes about six factors or six habits, I will focus on two. The first is desirabilizing whiteness, which Rad defines as positioning the experience, property, place, and status of white people as the desired state. While she does not explicitly write it, she alludes to Brown v. Board of Education as a law that places value on white institutions and not ones of color. I'd like to take a moment to honor the fact that I have said this for a very long time, and I've gotten people, and people have stared at me as though that I am speaking gibberish um, or as though that I'm speaking that what I'm saying is sacrilegious, right? How can we look at Brown v. Board of Education and criticize it? Because listen, you know, that's what educators do. And that's what people that are oppressed do. We look at things critically, right? Brown v. Board of Education did not pour resources, the much needed resources in segregated schools. It said, no, you have to come to this white school to get a quality education. And we'll talk a little bit later about um, the second trap, which is burdening the protected, right? But I have often said that Brown v. Board of Education did more to hurt Black education than it did to help it, because it devalued Black education when it said, you aren't receiving a quality education, so you have to, so we're going to desegregate our schools, and you have to now come to my school, this white school. But what happened to the quality education that people that people of color, Black people specifically, have gotten before the desegregation of schools, before Brown v. Board of Education. So, because really quickly, let me see, Brown v. Board of Education. I think, yeah, okay. Thurgood Marshall argued, right? Brown v. Board of Education. He had to have gotten an education somewhere, and it had to be a great education for him to one argue that case and then go sit on the Supreme Court of the United States of America. So again, I just wanted to take a moment to honor the fact that I've been saying it and I didn't have the language, right, to articulate that, and I do now, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm seeing this in my current district through school choice and the creation and or support or lack thereof for certain programs. In the high school situated in the more affluent neighborhood in my community, the CTE or career and technical education pathways and courses are not service industry dominant and provide the perfect opportunity for students who complete the program, the perfect opportunity to apply and be accepted to the UC system. At my school and the other high school in the district dominated by a Latinx population, excuse me, most of these pathways are service industry dominating and do not encourage more schooling. Pathways that are generally reserved to that community, like construction, patient care, auto repair, and food science. And food science is just an easy or dressed up way of saying culinary. Another instance of this grouping is the school in the more affluent neighborhood has a program where students can also go to college and complete their AA while completing their high school graduation requirements. Now, while this isn't uncommon and a lot of schools have agreements like this, there is only one school in our district where there is a system put in place to support that student's choice to doing both, right? Completing their high school education and getting an AA degree at the same time. The school has had a reputation of being the white school in the district and has since its inception, excuse me, been a favorite of the district. I was a student when the school first opened. The school trap is burdening. Excuse me, the second trap is burdening the protected, which Red defines as viewing minoritized and racialized individuals and groups in a deficit manner, seeing them as a deficient or lacking, while simultaneously burdening them to fix the current circumstances, excuse me, and systems of inequality. Again, Brown v. Board of Education. Oh, you're not getting the education that you need, so we're going to desegregate this school, but that school is 3 miles away from here. And my parents work 5 miles in the opposite direction. And we got to be to work. They got to be to work at the same time. I got to be to school. She uses the term protected, which is legal in nature, to argue that the notion of creating a protected class of people is racist and re-entrenches inequality because it refuses to look at the problem instead. And instead, it looks at the person. This trap then empowers those whose power and privilege shield them from these protected classes to strip these groups of their agency because they need protecting. Instead of people being able to advocate for themselves, the powerful and privileged make decisions for these marginalized groups. Part of this is trying to reconcile, I believe, the past, but I also believe it's a goal to reinforce dominance. Or its goal is to reinforce dominance. Because the dominant culture, without collaboration with any of the people they oppress, try to fix systems without dismantling problems, which include the social constructs, excuse me, that reinforce dominance. Going back to my example earlier, instead of providing adequate resources through our CTE programs to the other schools in the district, school choice is offered as a way to equitably provide access to all. So, no, I'm not going to provide the same CTE pathways at our other schools. I'm going to provide you the opportunity to go to that school. Again, that school is so far away from the city proper that getting to that school is difficult. There are no school buses or other wraparound services to help parents get their children from their home to their school of choice. Awareness of these paradoxical habits can inform my teaching practice if I first identify these habits within the system, within my own classroom as well, and doing work to personally decentralize these habits, providing equity to all. That is a challenge, though, because that process includes learning strategies to counteract that, strategies that I'm sure are not in a book anywhere. To be most effective, I must also teach my students about these habits and give them the space to call them out and change the culture of my classroom and school community to free ourselves of these inequities. Another challenge we as practitioners who wish to change the system will face is the fragility of the powers at be. And that's why it's not in a book anywhere, because the powers at be are fragile. Power and privilege is absolute when it is weaponized against the truth, and the truth backs down. I'm going to say that again. Power and privilege is absolute when it is weaponized against the truth, and the truth backs down. I'm going to back up off of this situation because you're too fragile to handle the truth. You just reinforced power and privilege dominant over your culture, dominance over your heritage, dominance over your perceived race. If we had nothing to lose, it wouldn't, right? If we had nothing to lose, the truth wouldn't back down. But the system we have created reinforces power and privilege because people in those positions are who hold the purse. One strategy I can employ in my classroom to challenge and dismantle these paradoxical habits is by teaching through a historical lens and asking my students to think critically of the literature and content standards we teach. I can also build an environment on my campus that honors who students are in an effort to build the confidence needed to see these habits in action and call them out in real time. Agency is the most important tool against oppression. Couple agency with project-based education that is student-centered and student-led, and these uh, and we couple agency with project-based education that is student-centered and student-led, and watch the work begin to happen that will challenge and eventually dismantle systems of inequality and inequity. I will personally keep reading this literature so that I can understand it more and then work with community partners, students, parents, and practitioners of the industry to advocate for an equitable distribution of resources at every level. Thank you.